Two aspects of animal life impressed me most during the journeys which I made in my youth in East Siberia and northern Manchuria. One of them was the extreme severity of the struggle for existence which most species of animals have to carry on against an inclement nature, the enormous destruction of life which periodically results from natural agencies, and the consequent paucity of life over the vast territory which fell under my observation. And the other was that even in those few spots where animal life teemed in abundance, I failed to find, although I was eagerly looking for it, that bitter struggle for the means of existence among animals belonging to the same species, which was considered by most Darwinists, though not always by Darwin himself, as the dominant characteristic of struggle for life and the main factor of evolution. The terrible snowstorms which sweep over the northern portion of Eurasia in the latter part of the winter, and the glazed frost that often follows them, the frost and the snowstorms which return every year in the second half of May, when the trees are already in full bloom and insect life swarms everywhere, the early frosts and occasionally the heavy snowfalls in July and August, which suddenly destroy myriads of insects, as well as the second broods of the birds in the prairies, the torrential rains due to the monsoons, which fall in more temperate regions in August and September, resulting in inundations on a scale which is only known in America and in East Asia, and swamping on the plateaus areas as wide as European states, and finally the heavy snowfalls early in October, which eventually render a territory as large as France or Germany absolutely impracticable for ruminants and destroy them by the thousands. These were the conditions under which I saw animal life struggling in northern Asia. They made me realize at an early date the overwhelming importance in nature of what Darwin described as the natural checks to overmultiplication, in comparison to the struggle between individuals of the same species for the means of subsistence, which may go on here and there to some limited extent, but never attains the importance of the former. Paucity of life, underpopulation, not overpopulation, being the distinctive feature of that immense part of the globe which we name Northern Asia. I conceived since the serious doubts, which subsequent study has only confirmed, as to the reality of that fearful competition for food and life within each species, which was an article of faith with most Darwinists, and consequently as to the dominant part which this sort of competition was supposed to play in the evolution of new species. On the other hand, wherever I saw animal life in abundance, as for instance on the lakes where scores of species and millions of individuals came together to rear their progeny, in the colonies of rodents, in the migrations of birds, which took place at that time on a truly American scale along the Ussuri, and especially in a migration of fallow deer, which I witnessed on the Amur, and during which scores of thousands of these intelligent animals came together from an immense territory, flying before the coming deep snow, in order to cross the Amur where it is narrowest. In all these scenes of animal life which passed before my eyes, I saw mutual aid and mutual support, carried on to an extent which made me suspect in it a feature of the greatest importance for the maintenance of life, the preservation of each species, and its further evolution. As I was reading these first few paragraphs in Pyotr Kropotkin's Mutual Aid, a Factor in Evolution, I was reminded of very similar thoughts that Erich Fromm, who studied Marx and Freud, and also was a part of the so-called Frankfurt School of Thought in Germany for many years. In his book, The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, Erich Fromm also explores theories about human competition, or competition among the species as a whole, and the evolutionary theories that came about explaining these issues. explaining the causes of human aggressiveness. So in this book, Erich Fromm responds to many earlier theories. For example, he is given an overview of Konrad Lorenz's theory on aggressiveness. And Konrad Lorenz studied animals, and he came to a conclusion that aggressiveness was one of the core features of survival, and that animals flourished if they were aggressive. And Konrad Lorenz tried to connect that to humans as well. And Erich Fromm, in his book, looks at the data that debunks Mr. Lorenz's hypothesis. Erich Fromm's own hypothesis seems to be aligned much more with what Pyotr Kropotkin was saying about mutual aid. Erich Fromm thought that humans were highly social animals and depended on each other in many ways. And he believed that humans learned to cooperate very early on in their evolution. And that was, in his opinion and to my understanding, the main aspect which led us humans to develop the way we have. These two philosophers seem to be talking about very similar issues, and I am very interested in continuing my study of both of these authors. So far, I have come across many thoughts that I intuitively agree with, and I have found evidence for in my own life. Seeing these thoughts being written down 100 years ago or so helps me understand that we humans possess much more in common than we sometimes believe we do. And this actually gives me courage and strength to keep on thinking on my own and continue exploring literature. And this also helps me understand that my intuition oftentimes comes up with universal truths that have already been voiced before. So I not only feel more confident in my own thought process, but I feel more united with the people of the past and the present as well. So I encourage you to check out these two books, and I'm going to put the links to these books in the description. So please feel free to talk to me about your own thoughts on what you read in these books. And let's continue the conversation to learn together more effectively.